If you are visiting Munich for the first time this year, make sure you watch this video because in it, I'll be sharing all the best tips and must-knows for first-timers. Hi, I'm Christina from happytowander.com, and I lived in Munich for several years and I honestly loved it. During the pandemic, I basically walked every single block of that city, and I'd like to think I've gotten to know it really, really well. So in this video, I am sharing everything. I'm sharing all my best tips and must-knows to make sure that your first trip to Munich is a roaring success. So let's get to it. Let's start with some Munich travel planning tips. Now first, when should you go? Munich is obviously best known for Oktoberfest, which takes place in the fall, but what a lot of visitors don't know is actually there are really fun festivals and things to do year-round, so I really do think that Munich is a worthwhile destination no matter what time of year you go. For instance, if you go in the winter, you have the Christmas markets and then you have Starkbierfest. If you go in the spring, you have Frühlingsfest. In the summer, there's all sorts of Volksfest and different folk festivals that take place, and street festivals as well in the city. So really, I don't think that there's a bad time to go, except maybe November and January, just because the weather then is a bit iffy, and also there's not a ton of really interesting events happening during that period. That said, Munich is a great year-round destination. I know I'm biased, but just know that if you can't make it to Oktoberfest, that's not the end of the world. There's definitely other times to go that are just as worthwhile. All right, now let's chat about where to stay. Luckily, Munich is a very compact city that's well served by public transport. So long as you stay close to an U-Bahn station, you're gonna be able to get to most places in the city relatively quickly. That said, if money is no object, of course, the Altstadt neighborhood or the Old Town neighborhood is most ideal because you're gonna be within walking distance of most places. If you're looking for a more budget-friendly place to stay, often you'll find that the cheapest hotels are actually located near the main train stations. That is for a reason, of course. These areas of town aren't necessarily the nicest, although this is Munich we're talking about. It's one of the safest cities in the world, in my opinion, so really you're not going to be in any danger, but just know they're not necessarily the prettiest neighborhoods. But if budget is an issue, this is definitely a great option, especially if you need to stay kind of in that area for events like Oktoberfest. Now, besides those main neighborhoods, if you're looking to get a little bit out of the tourist core, I have a few recommendations for neighborhoods that I personally really enjoy. First of all, there's Leyl, which is quiet and pretty, and also I'm biased because I used to live here. It can be quite expensive, but it's very, very close to the main town center, but it's more residential and just kind of like a nice, calm area. If you're looking for something more lively and vibrant, the Glockenbachviertel has a lot of different bars and restaurants. It's definitely one of the cooler areas of the city and also still very close to the touristy area in the middle. And then there's also Heidhausen, which is one of my favorite neighborhoods. It's very quiet, has a villagey feel, but still pretty close to the center with lots of good transport links that'll get you into the main area. There's also the area around Olympia Park, which I personally love because I used to live there as well. But to be honest, for first-time visitors, it's not the closest to most of the main attractions, so I wouldn't necessarily choose that for first-time visitors. Now, in terms of arriving in Munich, the Munich airport, I have to say, is honestly amazing. In addition to being just a really clean, really efficient airport, there's actually the world's first airport brewery located right there. So if you have the time before your flight or maybe when you arrive, definitely check out the Airbräu because they have some really great deals. The food is delicious and the beer is shockingly good and cheap for something that's at an airport. Now, when you're researching flights, you might come across another airport known as Munich West Airport, or more commonly, Memmingen Airport. This airport is Munich West, but more like an hour and a half west, so it's actually not close to the city at all. So unless you find a really cheap deal that goes into there, then I wouldn't recommend flying into that airport. There is a pretty efficient shuttle that takes you to the city, but it takes an hour and a half, so it's really not the quickest option. That said, a lot of really good budget-friendly airlines do fly into that airport, so if budget is a priority, then maybe look into that as well. Now, lastly, if you need help organizing your itinerary and time in Munich, I do have some pre-made itineraries on my website that you can steal, so be sure to check those out. All right, now let's talk about getting around Munich and the surrounding area. First things first, public transport in Munich, as I said before, is really excellent, so you don't really need to rely on renting a car or anything else. I would definitely advise against doing those hop-on, hop-off buses just because they're really expensive, and also you can get by just fine with regular public transport, which is what the locals use, and it's gonna save you a ton of money as well. Now, the public transport system in Munich relies on a mix of buses, trams, the U-Bahn, which is the underground metro system, and also S-Bahn, which are these trains that take you out into the suburbs. All of these are great, and they also all use the same ticket, so it's really easy to mix and match public transport when you're in Munich. Now, if you're not feeling super confident navigating the public transport system on your own, one really handy app to download is the MVG app. And with this, you can actually search up the different routes and it'll tell you exactly how you can get from point A to point B. And it'll also tell you the ticket that you need, and you can buy your tickets within the app and just show those if anybody comes by to check. And I think that this is really handy because public transportation in Munich, there's a lot of margin for error just because there's a lot of different zones, there's a lot of different types of tickets. And so if you just enter it on the app, then it's really easy to have that all on your phone, and then you don't have to worry about stressing buying the right ticket. Now, it's important to note that the Munich public transport system relies on an honor system, which means there's no fare gates or anything when you get there. Instead, they very much rely on you purchasing the right ticket, validating that ticket correctly, and then showing that ticket if a ticket controller comes on board. So often, these ticket controllers will be dressed in normal clothes. Yes, they go undercover and they don't reveal themselves until they're on board. So if there's a regular looking person asking to see your ticket, it's not a scam or anything. They might legitimately just be a ticket controller. So in that case, make sure you hold on to them for the entirety of your journey. Now, in terms of avoiding fines, you have to know it's not enough to just buy a ticket. You do have to validate it properly. So if you're getting on the U-Bahn, before you hop on board, make sure you look for one of these ticket machines that you can insert your ticket in, and then it'll validate for you. On the buses and on the trams, there's these machines as well, but they're on board. Definitely make sure you validate it properly, because if a ticket controller comes by and you have a ticket, but you've not validated it correctly, they will still fine you. And I've seen this happen actually many times, especially on the way to the airport, because a lot of people will buy the wrong ticket or they'll forget to validate it. This is why I recommend using the app, because once you purchase a ticket in the app, then it's automatically validated and it makes things a lot easier. I've seen a lot of people incorrectly validate their tickets, especially stripe tickets. I would say they're a Munich specialty. It's basically this ticket you buy that has 10 stripes, and then each time you use it, you validate it for a set number of stripes depending on where you're going or how long you're traveling. And this can be really confusing for first timers, especially the physical ones, because if you don't punch it in the right spot, they don't consider that to be validated. So this is why I recommend using the app. You can still use the app to download this type of ticket, and it's a lot easier to redeem and use because it's all digital. Now, besides the Stripe ticket, there's a lot of different ways that you can save money on Munich's public transport system over buying individual single tickets. The first one is buying a day ticket. So oftentimes you can buy a day ticket, which includes unlimited journeys throughout the day. Usually, if you're going to be traveling at least 3 times throughout the day, then it's going to be worth it. They also have group tickets, which make things cheaper if you're going to be traveling in a group. So if you're visiting with friends or you're visiting with family, this is a great ticket to use because it tends to be a lot cheaper than buying single ones. There's also the short ticket. So if you're traveling on the U-Bahn for 2 stops or less, or if you're traveling on the bus or tram for 4 stops or less, then you can buy a short ticket, which is usually about half price. So that can save you a lot of money as well. And if you're visiting for a longer period of time, you can also look into something known as the ETIQUETTE card. And this is basically a week-long or month-long pass that gives you unlimited journeys in that time. Now, if you're planning on doing a lot of day trips within Bavaria, then another ticket I can highly recommend is known as the Bayern ticket or the Bavaria ticket. And this is basically a ticket that you can use for unlimited regional trains in the state of Bavaria and public transport as well for a whole day. So this is really handy if you're doing any day trips, especially because public transport within Munich is included in this ticket. And if you're traveling in a group, this can save you a ton of money just because the way the pricing works is you pay a base fee, and then for each additional person, you have to pay an extra €6 or something like that. So the more people you get on this ticket, the cheaper it is per person. On that note, if you weren't already considering it, train travel in Bavaria is absolutely amazing, and there's a lot of really great day trips that you can do from Munich, so I highly recommend you take advantage of the train system while you're there. Some of the most popular day trips include Neuschwanstein Castle, Dachau concentration camp, and also Salzburg in Austria, which is only an hour away by train, so it's a really, really cool place known for Mozart and the Sound of Music. But besides those most popular picks, a lot of overseas visitors aren't aware of the fact that there's actually a ton of really amazing lakes really close to Munich. So if you want to do some naturey day trips, maybe go on a hike, there's tons of mountains, tons of lakes, and a lot of them are accessible through S-Bahn, so you can actually save some money on the ticket by going a little bit closer. That said, one thing to be mindful of is that there are a few different train stations in Munich, so depending on where you're staying, the Hauptbahnhof might not necessarily be the closest train station. Just keep that one in mind. Now let's tackle some tips for Munich food and drink. So the first thing is, a lot of tourists don't realize this, when you go to a beer garden, you're actually completely free to bring your own food to consume. So a lot of the time you'll see people just buy beers, so long as you buy a drink, you'll be fine. And you'll often see locals bring really cute picnics, they'll put out a tablecloth and just kind of enjoy the evening. So long as you have a drink, you can eat whatever food you bring. So that's a really great tip for saving money. Now, on the topic of beer gardens, you should know that most beer gardens are self-service. So you'll walk in, grab your own beers, grab your own food, and then put them on a tray, and then head over to the Kassa where they'll ring you up. Now, if you notice that your total is actually way more than you anticipated to pay, the reason for that is likely because they're charging something called a fond or a deposit on your glasses. So often what happens in this case is they'll give you a little token or something, and then when you're done with your glasses, you can bring that token back, and then they'll give you the money that you paid as your deposit back as well. And the reason it's important to keep hold of this token is sometimes they won't give you your deposit back unless you have it. It's kind of just a way to discourage people from walking around the beer garden, grabbing glasses and hoarding cash. So make sure that if they give you a token, you hold on to it because you're going to need that to get your deposit money back. Now, while you're in town, definitely make sure you treat yourself to a Bavarian breakfast. The traditional Bavarian breakfast consists of Weisswurst, which is a white sausage, along with some sweet mustard, usually a pretzel, as well as a wheat beer. And I know the combination might not look very good, it might not sound very good, but trust me, it's absolutely delicious, so well worth trying. That said, it's important you know how to eat this Weisswurst because it isn't for beginners. You need to take off the skin. I've seen people eat it with the skin, which isn't the nicest. So be sure to peel it first and then dip it in the sweet mustard and enjoy. Now, if I were to talk about the best foods to try in Munich, this video would definitely be a million years long. So for the sake of your attention span, I'm only going to highlight some of the ones that I consider quintessential must-tries. But just know that beyond these, there's a ton of really great foods to try in Munich. These are just the ones that for me are non-negotiable. First, roast pork, either in the form of Schweinehaxe or Schweinebraten. For me personally, I prefer the Schweinebraten. Either way, what's important is you get it with a potato dumpling and you also get it with beer gravy. It is one of the most filling and delicious meals you're ever gonna have. Second is Obatsta. This is like a cheese dip that they have in beer gardens. You'll use it to dip pretzels with. It's so good, definitely worth trying. Third is roast chicken. This is to me one of the best meals to have after you've already had a few beers. It's very common at Oktoberfest. And if you're not into meat, don't worry. One of my favorite Bavarian dishes is vegetarian. It's known as Käsespätzle, and it's these little bouncy dumplings that are slathered in cheese and crispy onion, and it's just unreal. As for dessert, there's two I really recommend. The first is Kaiserschmarrn, which is like torn shredded pancakes topped with powdered sugar and sometimes a jam or applesauce. And then there's also Dampfnudel, which is a steamed dumpling thing that's just slathered in a vanilla sauce, and I'm just drooling thinking about it. Now, for one last food warning, I have to warn you, these cookies are not meant to be eaten. They are very cute, they are very pretty, but they are purely meant for decoration. All right, now let's talk beer. There are 6 main breweries in Munich that brew within city limits, and these are the only breweries that are allowed to have their beer served at Oktoberfest. So if you want to embark on a noble mission, be sure to try beer from each one of these breweries. Now, unlike bars and restaurants in North America, when you walk into a restaurant in Munich, you're not really going to have a choice in terms of breweries. That's just because when you go to a restaurant, usually they'll have a sign out front that tells you which brewery they serve. So when you walk in, your choice is made, like what kind of beer do you want? Do you want a light beer? Do you want a Helles? Then you just tell them that, and then they'll bring you whichever brewery they serve there. So you don't have to pick between different breweries. You won't really have a choice unless you're ordering something different like a wheat beer. Trying a beer from each of the big 6 is of course a noble goal, as I mentioned before, but if you're short on time, the one that I really recommend and is a lot of locals' favorites is Augustina. It looks like this. It is simply delicious, and they also don't really export a lot of it, so if you're gonna try it, be sure to try it here. Now, if you're not into beer, don't worry. Every restaurant will also have wine and different soft drinks available as well. If you're looking for some popular soft drinks, 2 of the most popular ones are Apfelschorle, which is a sparkling apple juice. It's like half apple juice and then half sparkling water. And there's also Spezi, which is a mix of cola and also orange soda. Really, really refreshing. All right, now let's talk about Munich attractions. So the first thing you need to know is a lot of museums actually offer €1 admission on Sundays. So if you plan your visit for a Sunday, you can actually visit some of the top museums in the city for super cheap. And the good thing is a lot of them are located close to one another, so you can visit multiple museums in a day for the price of just €2 or €3. Now, if you're really into castles and palaces, one thing worth looking into is maybe getting a sightseeing pass from the Bavarian Palaces Administration. What they offer is one pass that includes admission to over 30 different castles and palaces across the state, and it's actually very affordable. So you can buy an annual membership for €50, but that includes unlimited castles and palaces in Bavaria. They also have a 2-week pass, which makes more sense for most visitors, which is about €35, and this includes big names like Neuschwanstein Castle, the Munich Residence, and the Herrenchiemsee Palace. Now, in terms of other sightseeing cards, the 2 main ones in Munich are the Munich Card and the Munich City Pass. And I acknowledge that these are very confusing names. It's easy to get them mixed up. Now, the main difference is the Munich Card is a card you pay for that gives you discounts to different attractions, whereas the Munich City Pass is an all-inclusive pass. You of course pay more for it, but then it includes admission to all these different places across the city. In my opinion, the discount card doesn't really make sense unless you're really keen on doing math. I feel like it just overcomplicates things, whereas the City Pass might make sense if you're planning on doing a lot of different attractions. That said, I don't really think that it's the best value for most visitors, especially if you plan on visiting on Sunday. That's because a lot of the museums that are included in the pass are only €1 on Sundays anyway. And so unless you're planning to see a lot of different paid attractions, it might not really be worth it to get this card. Now let's get to the juicy stuff. When in Munich, of course, seeing the touristy bits is great, but in my opinion, there's a lot of hidden gems that visitors miss, and this is where the city really shines. So first off, there's some hidden gems in central Munich that a lot of people miss, so here are just a few. First, the Rathaus actually does do public tours, and during that tour, you get to see one of the most beautiful libraries in the entire world, which is the Law Library located in this building. It's stunning, definitely worth a see. Near Stachus, aka Karlsplatz, there's also a building known as the Justizpalast, which in my opinion is one of the most beautiful interiors in Munich, and it's completely free to visit. You just have to go in and pass an airport style security check. Most people have no idea this is there, so be sure to walk in, take a look. It's absolutely beautiful. There's also the Asamkirche, which is by Zendlinger Tor. Granted, this isn't really a secret anymore. A lot of people do know about it, but it's this really beautiful tiny church kind of in the city center that a lot of people just walk past, so be sure to go in and take a look. And lastly, St. Michael's Church is often overlooked, but it has a secret that I feel a lot of locals and visitors miss, and this is the crypt at the very back of the church, which is actually the final resting place of a lot of Bavaria's most famous royals, including King Ludwig II, who is of course the king that is responsible for some of the fairy tale castles that you see around the state. Lastly, there's also a really cool alternative side to Munich that I feel a lot of visitors miss. So some of the places that you can explore to see this alternative side include the Volksviertel Mitte, which is behind the Ostbahnhof station. It's this area that's made up of different containers. There's lots of murals, there's lots of small businesses to support, and they do a lot of cool events there as well. There's also the Bahnwärter Thiel, which is a super popular hangout spot. They've got lots of containers there as well, and they host different events and parties. It's really cool. There's also the Alte Utting, which is this old boat that they've put on top of a bridge and turned into a really cool hangout spot. And if you're into street art, there's big murals all around the city. So there's cool murals around the Hauptbahnhof area, but also around Giesing, West End, and in some of the tunnels kind of along the Isar River, especially under the Angel of Peace. There's some cool ones. So seriously, Munich is cool. Take that, Berlin. We've got cool things as well. Now, the view from the Olympic Tower is also really nice, but for me, a really great free alternative is over at the Olympia Berg, which is this big hill in the park, and you can bring a picnic and go at sunset, and it's absolutely magical and totally free. And while you're there, you can also visit Olympia Dorf, which is one of the coolest student residences in the entire world. You basically have these little bungalows that have been painted over by students, and there's all sorts of cool artwork on them. And I'm biased because this is actually the first place I lived in Munich. So if you want to see my work of art, you can go over to Bungalow L4. But I don't live there anymore, so don't go there looking for me. All right, now let's discuss some tips for culture and etiquette. So the first thing you need to know is that Munich is the capital of the state of Bavaria, and the people who live there, the Bavarians, are very proud of this fact. A lot of them consider themselves to be Bavarian first. So when you're asking questions, make sure you talk about Bavarian culture, Bavarian customs, and not German culture and German customs, because many of them consider themselves to be quite distinct from the rest of the country, and the rest of the country considers them to be quite distinct as well. Now, Bavarians do have their own language, but honestly, in the city, odds are nobody's gonna try speaking Bayerish to you. You're gonna get by just fine with some basic German phrases and also with English as well. Now, in terms of greetings, Servus works throughout the day, so just feel free to bust that out and also know how to say thank you because you're gonna say it a lot. And that's very easy to remember, it's just Danke. Now, another important etiquette tip is to not make fun of lederhosen and dirndls. So contrary to popular belief, these are not costumes. These are actually the traditional dress of the region. And so people will often wear this for special occasions like weddings, for church, for special festivals, things like that. So when you see people wearing it, don't make fun of it. It's actually their cultural dress, and definitely don't buy costumized versions of it to wear around town because that's definitely not gonna go over well. All right, now let's move on to the last section, which is some final tips for when you arrive in Munich. First of all, don't jaywalk. I know that jaywalking is illegal in a lot of places, but people still do it. In Bavaria, they actually do enforce it. And not only do the police enforce it, the locals enforce it as well. Jaywalking is definitely not common, especially when there's children present, because they think that you're setting a bad example for them. So definitely don't jaywalk. Now, another thing to be aware of is bike lanes. So there's a lot of bike lanes in Munich that tend to be side by side with the pedestrian lanes. So if you're not used to bike lanes, then you might accidentally walk into a bike lane very easily. So just be mindful of that fact. Be sure to look on the ground for any cycling symbols, or just keep an eye out for bikes so that you know you're not accidentally in their way. Wherever you go as well, make sure to bring a lot of cash and coins. While a lot of places will accept card these days, cash is still king in Munich. And so having some bills on you for smaller purchases and also coins for the washroom is really important, because public washrooms here unfortunately are not free. You do need to pay for them. And in a lot of beer halls and beer gardens, there's often a bathroom attendant that's there to clean the washrooms, and it's customary to leave them a small tip as well. Now, another thing to be aware of once you arrive is that shops tend to be closed on Sundays. So if you need to do any shopping, don't save it for a Sunday. Grocery stores, retail stores, they're all closed on Sundays, apart from ones that are at transportation hubs and gas stations. So if you go to a train station, you will be able to find some shops that are open, and the airport as well. But generally speaking, just make sure you get all your shopping done, not on a Sunday. Now, lastly, if you want to blend in, it's important for you to know that Munich locals tend to dress for the season rather than for the weather. So for me personally, when I'm getting dressed, I kind of look at what the temperature of the day is and go according to that. But I've noticed locals in Munich tend to more go, now it's officially fall, so I'm going to dress for fall, or it's officially winter, I'm going to dress for winter. And so if you wear a dress or you wear shorts when it's fall, even if it's really warm out, you tend to get a lot of stares. I mean, I personally wouldn't let it stop me. I used to just dress comfortably for myself anyway, but just keep that in mind. If you want to blend in a bit more, dress for the season, not for the weather. All right, thank you so much for watching. I hope you found those tips helpful. If you have any more questions, feel free to ask in the comments. And for more practical travel videos just like this one, be sure to like and subscribe for more. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you guys next week. Bye.